This is the Collecting Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Purse, here with your co-host, Bill Hamill.
I'm somewhat more comfortable collecting real estate than I am collecting other stuff.
This is the Collecting Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Purse, here with your co-host, Bill Hamill. We interviewed Logan Rankin from Rankin Enterprises. I am so impressed. I think this stands out differently than any other episode we've done. Bill, I don't have to ask you what you thought. I already have a good feeling.
No, he freaked me out the entire episode. I've lived this business, and Logan has made it. I don't want to say he's made it look easy. I'm sure he's definitely had to work hard to where he's gotten, and the systems and culture that he's created in his business makes it sound easy. But to go from a single family in 2013 to over 1,900 units now is not a simple task. That is not what most people or many people can do. That it's very impressive.
His property management company went from 4 employees to 75 in, was it 2 or 3 years? If I had to put all of my money into one person that I've interviewed or met in my life or in real estate, it's going to be this guy. There was a point where we're comparing his service to Jeff Bezos, and I think he is that level of business IQ. He's just a business expert who decided to apply that knowledge to real estate.
Yeah, but you break it down. You break it down, and just like I told him at one point, I've heard a lot of what he's doing over the years. There's this knowledge is out there. It's just putting it in action and actually performing to the service level that he does. That's the magic. But if I'm able to say one thing to finish up here, any business that you're in, it's details, 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 and no one else does it. If you go to the detailed level that he does, you're going to get premium rent, and you're going to get tenants that stay. And when you are the best, you get paid the best. Simple as that.
It's all in the details. And yet, nothing he said but on its own was mind blowing, but he's executing every little detail in every part of the business that needs to be executed so that his employees are staying, his tenants are staying, or residents as he calls them. And there's so many good things that you put together to make that company. And I think he's going to be the face of a publicly traded company in 10, 15 years. I don't see any other outcome here.
Execution and results, that's the magic.
If you do get any value from this episode, which I can't imagine how you wouldn't, please give us a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. Check us out on YouTube. The episode is also available there. Thank you for listening. Logan Rankin, thank you for being here this morning. Really impressive story. I can't wait to hear more about it. Also, just finished writing a book. Logan, let's get right into it. Can you tell us more about your real estate background?
Yeah, love to. So my real estate background, I started investing in 2013. And one thing that's a little unique, well, I don't think very unique. I think it's very similar, I would say, to a lot of real estate investors is that, I grew up in a small town in northeastern Wisconsin, like didn't know anything about building wealth or money or certainly real estate. I graduated college that way too. And I did like what a lot of people do is I started working for a Fortune 50 company, corporation, and slowly worked my way up at that company, working for a corporation. Worked really hard at that and did really well at that. And but it wasn't the retirement vehicles that I was taught, the retirement vehicles that I was led to believe would help me be successful. After 3 or 4 years as a W-2 worker, I could just tell I wasn't getting ahead. And coming from no money, I knew I wanted money. I knew that opened up the doors to freedom and my time. And, my parents did a really good job being there for me. My dad was always coaching and I wanted to be able to do that too. And I didn't think it was sustainable in my W-2 job. Anyway, that led me to reading a lot of books, which led me to, if you read enough wealth and money books, you find out that real estate is a really, really important vehicle to financial freedom. And in 2013, that's where I started my investing career. And I bought a single family house with my wife, convinced her that based on what the book said, if you underwrite it, it should produce like $3,300. And it left $7 in our bank account. So it wasn't an easy first jump, and it was a small property, right? It's a single family house, but that's all we had. Like, we saved up a long time to buy it. I did almost everything wrong, by the way, to acquire that property and probably to manage it. I self-managed it, but I learned a ton, and most importantly, it changed our lives because a year went by, and just from underwriting that deal, I came within $50 of that $3,300. And I skipped this part, but I convinced my wife that to do it, and I said if it did have $3,300, we would take a vacation. I was so excited that it produced that amount of money because in no other investment before, most of it was in a 401k before. If someone asked me after a year how much money it would make, I would have no clue. So the fact that I was that close predicting it, I then convinced her not to take that vacation. We took that money, saved up for another year, and we bought a duplex. So we doubled. We went from 1 unit to 2. The year after that, we doubled again. We bought 2 duplexes, and it just a pattern of being very aware of our expenses and going broke by investing every dollar we possibly had into real estate to continue to scale. And we did this ourselves. And as I was scaling in my W-2 job, I started to translate something very important. I started to understand that what made me successful in my W-2 job, which was being really great with people, like understanding and leading people, which you have to do a lot in real estate, especially to grow the business. I could obsess over operations. I'm a systems guy. I love figuring out how to systemize things to reduce your own time, but more importantly, to make those real estate properties that I now call businesses more effective and more efficient. And I love numbers. So one of my jobs at my Fortune 15 company was pouring over P&Ls of these stores and figuring out how to, drive NOI. And finally something clicked. It probably took way too long that I'm like, these properties are businesses. And the same things that are making me good at my W-2 job could make me really efficient at real estate. And I started looking at my properties as businesses, and that changed everything. So I went from, year 1 unit, year 2 2 units, year 3 4 units. So after 3 years, I have 7 units. The year after that, I bought 10. So I jumped up to 17. The year after that, I bought 50. So then I jumped up to 67 units. And then the year after that, I went from 67 to 180 units. Once I hit about 180 units, it was enough money to quit my W-2 job. And I was a VP. So, I mean, I was making $500,000 a year, but those 180, 200 units were after, because it's not what you make, it's what you keep, right? If I looked at how much those 180 units were making me, it was about the same. And I was only working on my business for about 10 hours a month because I had a third party property management company at this time. But my W-2 job was working 60 to 70 hours a week, flying around the country, working nights and weekends, 2 little kids. It just didn't make a lot of sense. Plus, it wasn't even close to the ROI of my time that I was getting in real estate. So at 30, I left my job and took the jump, took the risk. And the first thing I did is I built my property management company, which I knew because, right, my skill set, operations, control, I wanted to make sure that I had the property management company and I could implement those systems and continue to drive not only like gross revenue, but profitable NOI in my properties. And that was in 2019. So, like I said, 180, 200 units today. My management company went from 4 employees to, we just hired a 75th. I actually think they start today. And then my portfolio that I own, I have 1,923 units. Something unique is that I've done that all with no syndications and no partners. So I actually own 100% of the equity still in those 1,923 units. And I've really kind of perfected something that's difficult in today's market is scaling while retaining equity. And a lot of that done we can dig into later, but has been through the repositioning process.
Holy smokes. Lot to unpack there. As I mentioned earlier, to see you go in 9 years from a one family to a two family. So it looked like those first three properties, you're just doubling one to a two family to 4 units. And to get to where you are today is amazing. And I really appreciate what you've done. What occurred when you went from the about 7 units and then you got up to that 50 unit purchase? I think you said, was there something mind blowing, something that you read where you're saying, okay, let's put the small properties behind me, we've got to scale?
Yeah, that's a good question, Bill. There's actually a few things. First and foremost, a lot of, in my opinion, because there's a lot, and I want to put this out there. I mean, there's a lot of ways to be successful in real estate, and there's no one way to be successful. I think so. You should understand your skill set, and then how that applies to real estate, and then take your own path. But for me, I'm a big believer in, if you are going to put, one of the reasons I put my money into real estate is I want to control and predictability in my cash flow and my returns. I invest in Wisconsin. There's not a lot of appreciation here. So it is about cash flow. And the best way to be able to predict that is to understand how to operate your investment, right? How to control your investment. So you said, what really helped you scale? Well, those first 3 to 4 years were super slow, but there was something going on that was very fast. And that was my learning curve. Like when I acquired my first few properties, there's a lot I didn't know. I still remember freaking out when I got a call that the washer and dryer, because I don't know how to fix anything. I don't even know how to fix a toilet still to today. And I own 1,923 units, but I started understanding, how to lead people, how to, you're only one phone. You could Google how to fix the washer and dryer. You could call someone to be able to do it. So I started realizing that um, it's about the resources that you build around yourself that really help you be successful. And that leadership piece was a really big thing for me, because when I got to about 17 units, the difference between 17 and 1, and why I felt comfortable jumping to 50, is because now over the last 3 or 4 years, I've worked with trusted individuals that had skill sets that I didn't, that were going to be able to fix the things that I needed to be fixed, or finance the things that I needed to finance. I also had a track record, right? So when you first buy your first duplex, the bank's a little uneasy, because everybody's trying to buy a real estate property. But when you've done it over the course of 3 or 4 years, right, and you've done it slow and methodically, and you've organized yourself to put together your scope of work and how well you've done on those, banks trust you a little bit more too. So it was a little easier to get financing. So that would be the second thing. And then the third and final thing, and this is the most important, I realized at that time when I jumped to 50, is that these weren't properties anymore. These were businesses. So by being able to look at properties as businesses, I understood, based on the previous properties, that, there's a little bit difference between a 5 unit and 100 units, but there's actually not that much, right? It's just 95 more units. So the transaction takes about the same. You have the same levers you can pull. Other than location, honestly, there's a lot of stuff you can drive within the business that I've learned over the last 3 or 4 years that made me feel comfortable jumping into that 50.
There's been so much value in this first 10 minutes, Logan. Before even asking more questions, there's so many good things you said that I want to go back and look at again. Like, I love how you said the control part of investing in real estate. I always make the analogy of investing in real estate feels like I'm betting on myself, maybe playing golf, bet on yourself. And then you invest in the stock market. It's like betting on the Lightning playing NHL. You might be able to look at it, analyze it, look in the numbers, but you don't have that control of what's going to happen at the end of the day. Also, the delayed gratification of having $7 left in the bank account, but knowing what your profit's going to look like at the end of the year, and being able to plan that and grow that way, and believe in yourself with that delayed gratification. And then numbers and people. Bill and I were going back and forth before the episode saying, how did this guy get 1,900 units in 10 years? What are the skill sets involved? It's numbers and people. Those are the two things you really need to be great at this. So up until this point, that jump from 7 to 50 is huge, but I've seen that before. The jump from 180 to 1,900 in 3 years, I don't think I've seen that before. Can you dive into that a little bit more?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, I would say, one of the biggest factors from going from, the 180 to 1900 for sure was building my property management company. So I was able to not only scale gross income, but controlling and building a business that is predicated around where I felt the market was going. So, right, like this is pre COVID, and I just left retail, right? I was working in retail leadership, and you could tell already in retail that labor was tough. Like it's tough to hire great labor, so everything, kind of like you said, was around team. I actually would put team before numbers. Like, because if you understand people, if you understand how to motivate people, if you understand how to align interests, if you understand how to engage people, and you can build a company around that, like my biggest competitive advantage still to today, right now, is not my ability to find deals. And trust me, right? We all can agree that's tough. It is that when I do find a deal, I can do 85% of the work in house. Like I have no material problems. I don't have problems getting materials. I don't have any problem repositioning my properties. Like we do. You ask how, like at the end of the day, how I'm able to go from that number to this number is I got really, really good at repositioning, and I built a team to be able to do it. My property management company is probably second a property management company and first a repositioning property. You could call it a construction company if you wanted. We do turns, $10,000 turns. I'm saying rip out floor, put in LVP, paint, trim, appliances, cabinets, bathrooms, vanities in 72 hours. So that's 72 hours, and we have 9 crews going, teams of 3. We have directors that lead, or operation leaders that lead them, and we are churning these. So we're doing 15 to 20 unit rehabs a week, and we are increasing the rent, not even getting into other income, by a minimum of $250. So we have a 30% ROI on every single turn that we do. And then if you look at the numbers, my market's about a 6 cap, Steven. So if I spend $1 on capex, that means I'm making 5. And how do you make 5? Well, you obviously refi the property after it's cash flowing significantly. So I kind of perfected the system, right? Buy an underperforming property where the business isn't running well. I specialize in 1970 to 2010. Especially love the shade carpet, weird green walls, all that kind of stuff, right? And then what I do is I make that property look like it's a brand new property, but I didn't pay what a brand new property costs, and then I raise the rent right in between. And there's a huge market for that right now because we have Gen Z, Gen X, and millennials as the biggest renters across the United States. And these guys care about and are proud of where they live. This is different. This is changing from the baby boomers being the biggest renters. And then they also care about the experience. And we give them both. So we give them a better place that looks better, that almost looks like an A-class property. We also give them the experience that they're looking for as well too, so that in 12 to 18 months, I can stick $3 million into this 100 unit apartment, and I can have everything completely repositioned. Then I refi that money back out, I roll it into the next property. But my specialty is being able to do that in a half the time. And most of these properties take an operator 48 months, right? 4 years, 5 years. And I'm doing it in 12 to 18 months for the first refi. So that's where the secret sauce is, right? Like if you can, it's just hard because I mean, you guys know this, but I know a ton of investors that when they have a vacant unit, they hire a 1099 contractor. It takes them 30 days to rehab that. It might take them longer because they're waiting on materials. Well, we have systems in place so that, when that tenant moves out, we're that thing's the materials are there on the doorstep ready to go. Our team's there ready to go. We're turning that. I mean, our turnover process alone is 16 steps, guys, because just to minimize the exposure to vacancy, but also speed up the repositioning process. So yeah, those are there's a lot to it, but if I had to narrow it down, I would just say building the team, and perfecting the speed of the repositioning process.
Well, that's great. And you mentioned that you came from retail and now you've created this expertise on construction management and property management. How do you go from retail W 2 to that specific construction management and property management on that scaled up level? Did you figure out on your own through your own systems and processes along the way? Or did you find a mentor or a coach or some type of a system to follow before you really built up that momentum?
Yeah, Bill, great question. I would tell you that I don't look at me being in the property management business. I look at myself, I've always looked at myself being in the leadership and just business sectors. Like that's it. That's what I got really, really good at. I don't think I'm really good at property management. I think I've perfected skills around leadership and around business. And that's what I took away from retail. And that's what I took away from reading books. I didn't have any mentors. Unfortunately, I have great family, great friends, but none of them were in real estate. None of them built money. So my mentors were books, and my mentors were taking action and learning. Every step I've made along the way, I've only known 20 to 30%, and I have to figure out the other 70%. Make mistakes all the time. But I think that's what separates me is like I'm going to learn as we go. If I feel comfortable with the first 30% and I don't know the other 70, I'm going to risk that I'm just going to figure it out, or I'm going to put people around me that are going to help me figure it out. And that goes back to, right, just understanding business and understanding leadership. But seriously, like every step I take, like I just found out on Friday. I haven't even put out a post on this yet, but I have a $60 million deal under contract. Further away than any property I've had. It's over 600 units, and we don't have it all figured out, but we have 30 or 40% of it figured out. I'm going to figure out the rest under due diligence and close the thing, and then as I start operating it, continue to figure it out. But that's just one of the steps because I can see where my company wants to be or where I need to be in the next 5 years, the next 7 years. So that I can see that. I just can't see how to get there. And the best way to do it is to be able to jump in and trust yourself to be able to figure that out.
It takes a certain personality trait, being able to trust yourself to that degree, because it's scary buying a property that size, not having it figured out yet, seeing what that mortgage is going to be every month, and we're talking big numbers here.
275,000.
Yeah, you know it.
Yeah.
So the whole time you're going on about the property management systems and everything that you're doing that's so impressive, I'm thinking Bill's got to love this because a lot of Bill's career was property management and implementing systems and dealing with teams and turnovers. And you mentioned a 16-step process. I want to hear more about that. Is that in the book that you recently finished? Is that a part of?
That's my next book. This
Okay.
book, we can talk about it a little bit later, but it's not just geared towards real estate. It's geared towards financial freedom because I think there's a lot of ways to be able to get into it, and of course we're all a little biased. This is a collecting real estate podcast, so I would agree that real estate is probably the quickest and the most effective way to be able to do it. But the book is predicated on a lot of different ways to be able to achieve it, even if it's not real estate. My next book will be 100% on repositioning and property management. And Bill, I don't know how you feel about this, but I'll definitely answer the 16 question. But what I mean, like I think I feel strongly that one of the things that I'm going to do in the next 5 years, or my company we're going to do, is we are going to disrupt property management. I think property management is very, very ripe for disruption. I think the name itself is wrong. You don't manage the property. Okay. You lead the residents. It's the residents, taking care of the residents. That should be the number one priority. Taking care of the property still matters, but it should be number two. And I think for the longest time, we've only cared about managing the property, and we cared a lot less about the experience that the residents deserve and that you should be providing. So we are doing it already, by the way. Like we have this year alone, in my opinion, we have 18 different standard operating procedures that I have yet to see other property management companies doing, or at least doing to the level that we're doing it at. And that's my ultimate goal. I want to disrupt property management because I think housing is a problem, a really big problem, and it's going to continue to be a problem, and more people are going to rent. And I think I came from retail, like the expectations for service and experience are really high. You got like Amazon, like pushing the envelope, and then I fall into property management, and it's awful. The bar is so low. The bar is so low. Like it's like you don't even have to try. And I get it because you don't have to try to rent your units. So there's a lot of landlords that unfortunately don't care as much about, and property management companies that don't care as much about providing a great experience right now. But I do think that's going to change, and it needs to change. And we're trying to be a disruptor in that segment. So that's something we can talk about a little bit later too. But the 16-step process, yeah, I'll talk processes all day, Stephen. So I'll just tell you how it starts, because this is a big thing, right? There's life cycles in property management, and one of the most important life cycles in property management is when the resident puts in, and we call them residents instead of tenants, right? When the resident puts in their 60-day notice, that's our policy, and then when the next resident moves in. And I think a lot of property management companies get that wrong or don't dissect every single step. So when I say a 16 step, we have 16 steps from this to this, and there's no shared ownership. There's no shared accountability. There's one person for each step. And some people own multiple steps, never more than 3, but no shared accountability. Like there's a specific time and a specific person that operates all these steps. So I'll share a few how it starts. Resident moves in or puts in their 60-day notice. Okay. That initiates one person to start the process of this person is moving out. And that person puts it into AppFolio. It's just a system we use. And schedules our operation leaders to do a pre-inspection within 7 days. Okay. So within 7 days, then we notify the resident, and our operation leaders goes and does a pre-inspection. Now, some people might be listening to this call and be like, what the hell is a pre-inspection? Well, that's because your property manager waits until the resident 60 days is up, and then leaves, and then they go walk the unit, and then they make a plan for the unit, and then they rehab the unit, and then they list the unit, and then 60 days after the resident moves out, they finally rent it. What we do is within 7 days of that 60-day notice, we do a pre-inspection so we know exactly how the unit looks. And then that operation leader meets with our executive leader, which is overseeing leasing, and they have to meet within 3 days after the pre-inspection. And basically they decide, do we need to do no rehab or a light rehab based on that pre-inspection? Do we need to do a medium rehab, or do we need to do a heavy rehab? So, for example, our medium rehab's $5,000 rehab. So it's like all new floor, paint, trim, and maybe we replace some fixtures. But we're keeping the appliances, we're keeping the cabinets, but it's kind of like right in the middle. And how they decide that, by the way, is just based on ROI. So if Michaela, which is my executive coordinator, says we can get $150 more in rent if we do the medium rehab in this location, you multiply that by 12, so you get 1,800, and you just take 1,800 divided by the 5,000, and that's a 36% return. So then we'll do the same thing for the heavy and the same thing for the light. Whatever equals the highest rate of return on that rehab is the rehab we'll do. So then within 50 days, 2 things happen. The operations leader now knows it's a medium flip, so he orders the materials. See, that's a big thing. When someone says they can't get materials, I laugh at this because I'm like, you couldn't get the appliances for 2 months? Like, when did you order them? And they'll be like, a week after the tenant moved out. Yeah, I mean, I believe that. Like, especially if you're at a smaller scale, like it. So we're ordering it 50 days out, and we use a lot of different suppliers. One of our biggest is Lowe's here in the Midwest, and we're actually their second biggest customer other than Chicago Housing. So they're gonna follow through, and they're gonna deliver it when we say, what we need, etc. The same time we order those at 50 days out, Michaela is then meeting with the leasing team, and we're actually posting the unit. So you can see, like, I just talked through 4 steps, and it's only 10 days into the resident putting in their 60-day notice. So we have all these steps that are in place that are very, very important, and the resident hasn't even moved out yet. When the resident moves out, like that's where I feel like people get behind. Is there's very few things in real estate are not controllable. Like very few things are not controllable. I laugh at when people call real estate risky, and they're like, "What happens if you need to fix your roof?" You know that you need to fix your roof. The roof only lasts so long. You know what I mean? Like you, there's you can plan for these things, people. You can plan for these things. But
I
anyway,
need
yes,
I need
I
this next
digress.
book.
What's that?
I need this next book.
Yeah, I am. I'm going to work on that.
Hasn't
It's.
written
I
yet.
don't think there's a lot of good property management books, and I think the same thing about repositioning. Like we have systems like this, right? But the systems on repositioning are just they're killer. Like we do. I think we do more before the property actually closes than most people do. Like 6 months after it's closed. So there's so much into that too.
And that's the key. That's the key. The few similarities between you and I learned as I went as well. And I learned the hard way 4 or 5 years after being in the business, realizing that it's not all about just keeping a high occupancy rate and collecting rents. There's a service involved here. At that point in my 20s, I said, am I going to do this professionally or just get out of the business? Because I was not comfortable with the service I was providing. So at that point, the systems begin. The operation manual begins because you have to provide a good service. And part of the system was not a 16 step, but 90 days before someone's moving out, same idea. We're preparing for that turnover and keeping that occupancy rate as high as possible, but also creating that system for great service. We want to have high retention. We want to have our tenants referring their friends and relatives to rent our apartments. And that went very, very well. Unfortunately, I was super involved in that process. So the one stark difference between me and you is I went from 2 units to 250 in a long period of time, where you went from a single family to 1900 in half the time it took me to get to 250. What I'm very curious about, and I appreciate it, and I'd love to hear your response on getting a little more detailed on that experience. So I'm just trying to create a great service and a comfortable place for my residents to live. Talk more about the experiences you're providing for your residents.
Yeah, and some of them are in my. We used to call it retail is about detail, and I think the same thing with where a resident lives. They really do notice the details. So, a few things like at my apartment communities, you're going to see that the grass is edged. Okay, it's crisp. It looks good. You're going to see that my places are landscaped well. You're going to see that when you walk into a common area, it just doesn't look clean. It smells good. And for anybody that's been in property management, you know what I'm talking about in those hallways. Like smell is a big thing. Um, so it just like, I mean, that alone, right? Like I mentioned a few things like, what are your standards? We have brand standards at our apartment communities, and those need to be met and those need to be upheld. And I would tell you the ones that I just mentioned, there's a lot that we have, but a few of the ones that I just mentioned are the first things that I think a lot of property managers or landlords cut out of what they do. They're like, we can't spend money edging the grass. I would tell you it's those little details, it's those branding details that go such a long ways. There's a noticeable difference, right? And yeah, it does cost more, but you can figure that out as well too. Another little detail when we were trying to figure out how to make ourselves different and disrupt the space when it came to experience, we called the top 10 best property management companies in my state of Wisconsin. Do you want to guess how many of those 10 answered the phone?
Two.
Four.
One.
Oh, man.
Because one. Now, it's even worse if I asked you how many actually called us back when we left a voicemail. So we made an agreement that we are going to answer the phone. Not only are we going to answer the phone, but we're going to answer the phone on the second ring, and we're going to answer with a smile. And so we're going to put a lot of emphasis on that experience that you get if you do need to call us. Now we have all the other technology as well. You can text us, you can email us, right? Like, but if someone calls, we answer, and we answer in the second ring. And we pride ourselves on those little things. I would say we took a survey, and what are some of the important factors that a resident looks for. So if they're moving into a rehab home, one that's really nice, one of the biggest things that they said is, God forbid something goes wrong, they just want it fixed, and they want it fixed quickly. In my state, and it was my Wisconsin was in the top 30% of the United States. Last year, statistically, it took 48 days to complete a service request, meaning that when a resident puts in to get their garbage disposal fixed, it took 48 days. Okay. There's worse. There's worse across the United States. 48 days, guys. And I think a lot of that, people are, I still hearing this when I acquire properties, where the resident will be like, yeah, the PM company couldn't get the appliance. So, we just had to wait. It was on back order, or because of COVID, things are delayed and we can't find good help. Don't even get me started in being able to hire people, because that's your job as a business. And we need to figure that out. It's not the resident's fault. But anyway, we do service requests. Last year, statistically, we did 97% of the time, we did it in 48 hours. We communicated them within 2. Like, my big thing is, if Jeff Bezos can figure out how to deliver boxes on people's doorsteps the same day they order them, like, that's eventually where we want to go. Like, I want to, by the end of this year, Bill, make a commitment that if we don't complete the service request, the thing that you need fixed in 48 hours or less, you will not pay rent per day until we fix it. We're that close to making that brand promise to our residents. And quite honestly, they shouldn't. Obviously it's going to be reasonable, and we got to figure a little bit of that language out. But can you imagine, like, again, in a time where I feel like experience is not very well thought out, people aren't adjusting to it. We really want to separate ourselves. And by the way, obviously it goes without saying, that's worth something too. Like, residents will pay more to rent from us, especially the residents that we want, for that experience. And we're building that kind of reputation that I think, people want. So anyway, those are, for the sake of time, those are a few of the processes that we've put in place when it comes to experience. And I think, depending on how you look at them, right, they might seem small to you. Oh, like, fixing something quickly, that's a big deal. Like, speed in business in general is everything. I'm a learner, right? I read a book a week. So I do love companies like Amazon and business, and no other example about speed in business can you draw a correlation to, is when my wife could order an Amazon package and it could arrive in 3 days, but she'd rather pay for a Prime membership so that it comes within 1 day. One is free, one costs money. She's going to, like, speed equals more money. And I think that's in property management, that's something that, it's very important and can make you more money too.
It's all in the details. I love that you're holding yourself to that Amazon type of that level of service. And I want to be shocked by that 48-day statistic, but I'm really not, because I see it in what we do up in New York too. And that should be shocking, but it's not. And like you said, the bar is so low. So if someone
Yeah.
like you can come in and disrupt it, there's opportunity there. I have a list of probably 15 questions here, because there's been so many good things that you touched on. One that I want to ask is, you mentioned being in Wisconsin and you're going after these 100 to 500 unit complexes at this point. You're going to run out of Wisconsin properties, right? Are you planning to expand into other states, or what does that 5-10 year vision look like?
Yeah. And we will. Yeah. I don't want to just disrupt property management in Wisconsin. I want to do it across the United States, or the majority of the United States. It's going to be hard to convince me to go into California. But I that is the plan. And I think I think I'll have 10,000 units, $1 billion worth of real estate in Wisconsin in the next 3 to 5 years, is probably going to happen, and that's going to give me a really good. Right now, closing in on 2,000 with this big acquisition, it'll be about 2,500. It's a really good sample size to perfect these systems, and then we'll start jumping to other states. So if the deal is right, I think we'd probably jump this year, but most likely it'll be next year or the year after. One of the problems, one of the hardest things about this kind of growth is being able to deliver the kind of experience that is needed, right? And you have to have the people that are well trained. I mean, a lot of this takes 6 to 12 months to really get the hang of it. Well, if you look at the going from 4 employees to 75 in 2.5 years, I mean, I have people that have been in role 4 or 5 months training somebody that's been in role 2 or 3 days. So like, and by the way, we have a 9% turnover rate. Like we're not losing people. Retention is a very big focus. I actually have a president that runs my property management company. Fun fact, he didn't know anything about real estate or have any properties when I hired him to run my company. So it tells you how much I put into leadership and team and culture, because that is what he's amazing at. But that is, Stephen, to ask your question, that's the only thing holding us up right now, is because our expectations are so high. Hiring people and getting them into our training and development programs and just getting them some experience, because we're still going to do, no matter where we are, we're going to do 60 to 70% in-house, out of Northeast Wisconsin. Our technology is huge, like, right. It's really, really huge. Showings, everything. Like, we do a lot in-house, so we won't have to do too much. Now, you can't replace the person that's rehabbing the unit or servicing the unit when things go bad, but you can replace just about everything else. Leasing the unit, paying the rent, questions, service, etc. Like, a lot of that with Gen Z, X, millennials, they want technology. And quite honestly, like, we're doing virtual move-ins, we're doing virtual leasing. I don't remember the last showing we actually did, honestly, guys. Like, not, it must be 99 out of every 100 move-ins never saw their unit. They did, like, with a Matterport, right? They walked it through on their phone, but they didn't visit it in person. So we'll continue to expand, as we continue to get enough of these systems being run by people that are a little bit more experienced. Spending $100,000 this year alone in development and training. We hire for attitude, we hire for work ethic. We do not hire for skill. We do not hire for experience. I could care less. And then we get them in training with the people that we've already trained, that are operating our SOPs, and they learn the right way. Quite honestly, like, Bill, you know this, like, in your property management career, how many things have stayed the same? I think the only thing we know that is going to be constant is that everything will change. So I need people that are resilient and adaptable, growth minded, great attitudes, great work ethic, because whatever you're learning today, most likely at my company, it's going to be different in 6 months. So that adaptability is huge.
Well, I appreciate all of that, and you make it sound so easy. And I know that you've put in the upfront work and the hiring, which made it possible to create that culture and to operate at a high standard. But that's not easy. And I'm speaking for myself, but I'm also going to speak for a lot of other property management companies, because we're stereotyped. Property management service sucks. And I've seen it. And I know it gets busy. And you still have to have a great service. I'm hearing what you're saying is you can't tell a resident that, hey, sorry, we couldn't get the work order in 48 days. We're short staffed. That's an excuse. People that are paying premium rent don't want to hear an excuse. Excuses shouldn't be used in any business for any reason, because it's bullshit. And I appreciate how you're able to develop that culture and operating on that high standard. And now I'm going back to how your level of detail. These aren't things that are new to me today. I've been trying to get to that level for 15 years. And when we're hiring maintenance people, that's the one constant. You're saying that there's a lot of change. hiring maintenance people has seemed to be constant with me, where it's so difficult getting people to operate at a high standard, even when we train and preach what we're trying to accomplish and the service we're trying to provide. Can you talk a little bit about the training of maintenance technicians to operate at your standard?
Yeah, for sure. So we do a lot with training in all different levels at our company, and for maintenance technicians alone, we hire some with experience, but a lot that don't have that much experience. So they're training with their boss a lot, which is really important, right? Their maintenance leader, so they can develop a relationship, because I think making sure that you have a deep relationship with your team, so that there's a saying that goes, you will join a company, but you will leave your boss. So, like, one of the things that's really important to me is, I think when people leave or quit, right, they're quitting a person. They're not quitting necessarily a company. I think most problems when it comes to staffing are leadership problems, not system problems or training problems, or leadership problems. So the first few days, they're spending a lot of times with their leaders, and I think that's different than what some companies do. We train them with our licensed professionals. So we have a licensed plumber on staff, right? A licensed electrician, HVAC, etc. So we'll get them days with these skilled labor, and those guys, by the way, are incentivized by how good of a job they do training as well too. For example, one of the things that our HR asks these new hires after 2 weeks, and we share it with the whole company, is who was the most impactful person on your training. Who is that? It doesn't even have to be your trainer. Like, who was the person that made the biggest impact in your first 2 weeks? And we share it with everybody. We also put training and developing people on everybody's performance review, right? So it incentivizes people. We're a performance-based company. It incentivizes people to want to help other people grow, want to help other people develop. So I think that's a big piece. And we get them in the field. We get them in the field as fast as possible. We get them in front of residents as fast as possible. So and we always have that until they feel comfortable. We always have that trainer or leader with them. But I think that's a big part of it too. And then from a methodical standpoint, we have a development plan, right? So there's like 10 different things that you got to get signed off by your trainer to know how to do within your first 90 days. Now, some come in with some skills. So maybe 5 of the 10, they go faster, right? But within the first 90 days, you got to get signed off on all of them. And I'm a big believer in like performance paced training, because as somebody that is a quicker learner, one thing I hated about school is that if you learned something rather quickly, it didn't matter. You just sat there until everybody caught up. And in the workforce, we do the same thing, because that's what we're taught in school, right? Everybody learns the stuff the same amount of time. If there's a week to learn how to do HVAC, you spend a week. Fuck that. Like, no. Like, here, if you can learn it in 3 days and get signed off in 3 days, then you move on to the next step. And then you move on to the next step. Anyway, so some people take the full 90 days. And if you don't by the full 90 days, you're probably not going to work out, because this isn't the stuff we're training, these 10 things, it isn't that hard. So if they don't make it in the first 90 days, we fire fast. Like, just didn't work out. Typically, they'll learn it in 60 to 75 days, but we've had people learn it in 30. So what's cool about this is we give them a raise at the 90 days, right? They have a 90-day review, especially if they learned it quicker. And we don't stop there. I think that's where a lot of companies make a mistake. We have phase number 2. So if you learned phase number 1 when it came to plumbing, there's a number 2. Number 2 might include something more complicated, like not just fixing a sink or a water leak. Now it's putting in a water heater. Anyway, in phase number 2, there's 10 more activities that you get to learn and that you get trained on, and that eventually you get signed off on at your own pace. You control your timing. This is cool too, right? We're not just developing you. You need to develop yourself. You need to own your training. And by the way, you want to, because if you learn the stuff in phase 2, you get another raise. And this is outside of your annual performance review, right? So we're like, in my opinion, you should always be incentivizing people to continue if they can add value to your company. And obviously, if somebody can go from fixing a water leak to putting in a water heater, and we don't have to pay, a licensed plumber to come in and be able to do that, it's also reducing the cost for our company and for that owner. Therefore, we're going to pay our person more. Or maybe they can take on a bigger number of units to be able to service. So we're like, some of these, in full transparency, we've rolled out first this year. So there it's really exciting though, because in every area of our company, and you asked for maintenance tech, so I just wanted to give you some examples on that. We're really involved, but we're getting other people involved, and we're trying to like show them where they're going, right? Like, how do we there's a career path here for you. Like, you can leave and probably find a job for $2 or $3 more somewhere else. But if you stay with us, like, right, that $2 or $3 somewhere else is going to stay at that rate for a really long time. With us, there's a career path. You can, if you develop and you learn, not only can you make $2 or $3 more, but there's an opportunity to get paid even more than that other job that's hanging out there. Then we'll talk to them about, Bill and Steven, we'll talk to them about our growth. I think this is where a lot of companies get it wrong. Like, growth as a company, you're going to make a lot of mistakes, but most people, most employees, at least employees you want, love growth because it opens up opportunities for them not only to make more money, but to take on more responsibility and to move up through the company. So then, like, go ahead, take that other job. But then what we'll quickly say is we are the number one growing company in this state right now. The lowest we've ever grown by was by 240%. If you perform really well here, that small increase in wage is so short term. If you're thinking long term, which we always try to have our employees think about that, think about what that looks like. So we share the growth with them. Obviously, we already talked a little bit about culture. There's a lot of different things we do in our company to encourage culture, which is like, free books, free learning, free real estate workshop, free personal finance worksheets. We'll manage your properties at the same cost basis that we manage Logan's. So we only manage my properties, by the way, and my employees, nobody else. And we won't manage anybody else. And so can you imagine like getting an economy of discount at 2 units, like a guy that has 1,900? Like, we're managing at 20 to 25% less than any other company. It's like our 401k, because I won't offer that. And then also, one cool thing I made a decision to do too, this is less about training, but more about retention, because that was part of your question, is I've never taken $1 from the property management company. I pay myself zero. All the profit stays in the company, and it gets redistributed in compensation to the company and CapEx. So like buying trucks and stuff like that, which I think, and by the way, the P&L is open to everybody. Doesn't matter if you're a painter, cleaner, operations leader. You can see exactly where every dollar is going, because obviously that profit is staying within the company, which means it can only literally go to you if you're performing well, or to things that'll help you anyway, like a truck or gas card or whatever. But my secret sauce, guys, to wrap it up, is don't develop your training programs to be fair and consistent. That is a lie. Do not develop them to be fair and consistent. Develop them to be performance paced. Take the individual into account, because they will love that. They will absolutely love it, and they will challenge themselves. They will develop themselves. They'll almost train themselves. And it is okay that person gets paid more than the person that learned slower. It is okay. That is the fairest thing to do, if you think about it, right? Being unfair in how you train people and how you pay people is the fair thing to do. And that really, really rewards the highest performers and incentivizes people to want to be a higher performer.
Logan, you're an expert at business, and you decided to apply it to real estate.
Yeah.
I could ask you questions for 12 hours here without any delay, but we're hitting 50 minutes and we have to wrap this up because you have 75 employees, 1,900
Yeah.
units. Have you been on Bigger Pockets yet?
I haven't. No, my team just applied a couple times over the last 6 months, and
They're
we
missing
haven't
out.
been. What's that?
They're missing out not having you on there yet.
I appreciate that, man. And you said it exactly right. I really do. I really do try to look at myself as a business owner, not a real estate owner. And I'm just collecting real estate. Like I'm just collecting businesses. That
Love
is
it.
what real estate's about. Uh,
Bill, you
so
want to take this away?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Forget bigger pockets. This is the Collecting Real Estate podcast, and I really want to have you back. I wanted to dive into funding these deals to get from 7 units to 1900 without syndicating and stuff, but I always get sucked into the operations and the property management. I don't regret it at all, because that last response you just gave was absolutely fantastic, and super helpful for anybody who's in this business. But we definitely want to respect your time, and we like to end this with three last questions, because they say you have to have three of something to make a collection. So, three questions for you to finish up. Number one, in 5 words or so, what's the most important thing you've learned since you started collecting real estate?
real estate is a business.
Thank you. Number two, what are your 1 to 2 year personal goals? Non business related personal goals.
Yeah, I would say personal goals would be one of them would be I want to write my second book. And I'll tell you, it took me longer to write my first book than it did to reposition a apartment. It took me like a year and a half. I struggled. I just want to put out a really good product, and that's not my specialty. But I want to continue to help people. That is one of my biggest things. Other personal goals. I want to continue on my health journey. So been working out and eating clean. It gives me more energy. And my last goal would be taking that energy and pushing it towards my family, coaching my kids in a lot of different events and having a blast. So I want to continue to spend time with them, and whether that's on vacation or coaching or whatever. So those are some of my personal goals. I still read a book a week. So that's like, if anybody here, like if there's one thing you want to take away or you want to learn more about business or anything else too, like I think mentors are incredible. I think workshops can really help speed that up. I think they would have speed up my journey a little bit more. But I would just say, if you just read 10 pages a day, if you just read some books, like it can change so much for you.
No, I agree with that 100%, man. It's yeah, there's a lot in constant reading. Number three, how can Steven and I assist you, and how do we contact you?
Yeah, I'll put my contact information in the show notes. I'll shoot you an email after this. But loganrankin.com is my website. Logan J. Rankin on just basically Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I try to put out as much free content as possible. How you guys can assist me? I just launched a book last week, my first book, and it's on find your financial freedom. The more you can get the word out on that, I took a year and a half to write it, like I said. And I'm getting a lot of really positive feedback. Books changed my life, so I wrote this book to change other people's lives. And I didn't find just one book on financial freedom or wealth building that put it all together. So that's what this book is. It questions a lot of mindset shifts, but a lot of books do that. Rich Dad Poor Dad does that. But the way I question it, I think, is unique. More importantly, I have a 3-step process, which probably doesn't change anybody if they listen to this whole podcast. I like systems. I have 3 steps that have helped me reach financial freedom, right? And I went from negative 40,000 to a multimillionaire in 7 years. And then I did it over and over and over again after that. And these 3 steps I still do today, and they're all in there, right? There's 3 distinct steps. So when you're finished reading the book, it's not just like, oh, wow, like hopefully I change your mindset a little bit, but then what do I do, right? You read a lot of these books and you're like, what do I do? Implement these 3 steps. I go into great detail. I also go into detail if you can do it with your significant other. And they're simple, but the way I do them is very intense, and they're very purposeful, and they're very focused. Anyway, and I got a chapter on legacy. So best way to learn is to teach. And I think we should be teaching our kids about money and wealth and financial freedom. And even a bonus chapter on real estate. But Stephen, I'll get an entire book on real estate soon.
What's
too.
the name of that book again?
Looking forward to it.
Find Your Financial Freedom. It's on Amazon and everywhere else as well too. I'll shoot you the link too if you
Perfect,
want to throw that in the
perfect.
show
Thanks for
notes.
being on the show.
Absolutely.
Fantastic episode. Have a great day, Logan.